I've spent over 40 grand learning about the subconscious mind so you don't have to. Now, for years of my life, I struggled with consistency, bad habits, not achieving the goals that I wanted in my life, knowing that I wanted to do these things, but still struggling to do so. And what it came down to was my thoughts. I had a racing mind. I couldn't captivate my thoughts, and I just struggled. And I would go in these loops of doubt, shame, bad habits, procrastination, lack of consistency. And no matter what I tried, I couldn't achieve my goal. And the biggest misconception that I see is that people think all these things like discipline, routine, self improvement, meditation, journaling is the cure. While those things are very important and beneficial, until you can actually control your thought patterns at a subconscious level, none of the actual tools will work. So by the end of this video, not only will you have the tools to become aware of your thought patterns, you'll also have the necessary framework that I have personally used and helped dozens of other people use to break bad habits, destroy the battle of consistency, and achieve their desired goals for their life. All right, so our brain is built just like a computer, and that comes with good news and bad news. The good news is, we can go in and rewire the hard drive and the program into the computer at any time. But the bad news is we have to do that consistently if we want to enter the desired state we want to be in the mindset. And our subconscious mind processes about 11 million bits of information via our five senses. And whether we realize it or not, every second of every single day, our subconscious mind is absorbing all of this information. And we can only consciously intake about 150 to 160 bits of that information at a time. This is where a lot of people mess up, is that they have all this data coming in from their five senses into their subconscious mind, and it gets sent through the subconscious feed into the conscious mind. Now, the thing is, people get these thoughts at random times that typically come from part of the 11 million bits that they've intaken every second of every day, but they think that their thought is important, and they think that the thought defines them. The brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's fake. And so when you get a thought from some random bit of information from who knows what happened throughout your day, and you believe it consciously, you're thinking about it consciously, you're sending it back into your subconscious mind, which is giving more data to the hard drive to be stored, and it goes in this loop. That's why those thoughts that you don't want to think about, you keep thinking about because you think that they define you, and so you start stressing about it, which gives more data to the subconscious, and then it repeats, and then it gets worse. And that's why people with anxiety tend to get worse anxiety over time, because they can't seem to figure out that their thoughts don't define them, and they get to choose what thoughts they want to think about and what thoughts they don't want to think about. And they get to decide, what thoughts they're going to keep and what thoughts they're going to throw back out into the environment. We'll talk about how to actually identify those and remove them in a second. But this is the main issue that people think, is they think that their thoughts define them when they really don't. So here's what this actually looks like. It's called a problem loop. And you do not want to be stuck in a problem loop. I've been stuck in problem loops before. They are not fun. They will take you to a very, very dark place. You want to break those as fast as you can. Now, a very common one that I've seen, and I'm sure you've probably seen the same thing, is alcoholics. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'll run you through the actual loop. They have these dark thoughts, these anxious thoughts, right? And they believe them to be true. And these thoughts could have literally came from anywhere. They could have been told to them. They could have just been absorbed in the 11 million bits that they consume every second of every day. Regardless of how they came, they got these thoughts, decided to believe them, and so they became a belief. And those beliefs tend to be negative. They have these negative beliefs based on these negative thoughts that they had. What does that cause? Action, drinking alcohol. So they start drinking. The next day, they're even more anxious because that's what alcohol does to you. They listen to it again. The belief strengthens. And what does that cause? More alcohol consumption, more anxiety, more thoughts that they're listening to, deeper belief, and then it keeps deepening and deepening in this downward spiral until they either become so deep in alcoholism that it is very, 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 very hard to come out of, or sometimes people end up taking their lives. Like, this is not where you want to be, and you will stay trapped in this cycle until you decide to break it. All right, so now we're going to get into the 3-step framework on how you can remove these problem loops from your life for good. Before we get into it, I just want to give you a brief disclaimer. Using these 3 steps will change your life and will get you the desired outcome that you want and will help you enter any state mentally that you desire. The thing is, These will bring up awarenesses about people in your life, environments, aspects of your life that you may not have been aware of before. And by doing these exercises, you may see things differently. You may see people differently. Your relationships may shift. Your environment may shift. It will get you where you want to go. But just know, when you start messing with the subconscious and you start diving in, you'll start seeing things a lot differently. And that can be difficult for some people at first. And these take time. Right? This takes time. The next step takes time. And the final step for completion takes time. I would screenshot this. I would write it down, because if you don't practice it, it's not going to be subconscious like that. And that's how you want to use it. It took me a little while to get good at these things, and now I can do them on the spot all the time. And it's amazing, but it takes practice, just like anything. You know, you can't go to the gym once a week and expect to see tremendous muscle growth. Like, it takes time, it takes practice. You have to consciously do it in order for it to become unconscious, just like we talked about at the very beginning. The more you consciously practice it, the more data you're giving your subconscious, the more you'll start doing it subconsciously. The best way to reframe something, like if you're struggling with it, is instead of asking yourself why this is happening to me, ask yourself, how is this happening for me? Instead of, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, how is this happening for me? Your thought arises. Instead of listening to it, you're going to acknowledge it. You're going to observe it. And I'll kind of get into how you do that in just a second. But you're not going to believe it. You're just going to acknowledge it and observe it. Then you're going to identify the cause. So this is not always going to be possible, but most of the time you can kind of pinpoint where that thought came from. So let's go back to the alcohol example. So let's say I drank 30 beers last night and I did some things that I regret. And I wake up and my buddy's telling me about all these things I did, and I'm super, super anxious because it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I'm getting these thoughts. I'm like, oh, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad guy. I'm not good enough. Pause. Okay, I identify the thought. Where did the thought come from? It came from me doing something under the influence of alcohol. That doesn't mean it's who I am as a person. It means, hey, maybe I shouldn't drink anymore, which is where we extract the learning. And instead of being like, why did I do these things? Why do I struggle with alcohol? Why does this keep happening to me? Why am I the dumbass when I drink? Reframe it. What is this showing me? How is this happening for me? Okay, so, those mistakes showed me that alcohol doesn't agree with my system very well, and maybe, I shouldn't drink, and I hang around these specific people, I get a little more tempted to drink, so maybe I shouldn't hang around these people as much, or maybe I should go to bed earlier because at this time of day, I'm more tempted to drink, reframe it and understand the learnings. So let's go through it again. Your thought arises, you acknowledge and observe it, you identify the cause, and if you can't identify the cause, it's likely just due to the fact that it came from some bullshit in your environment, and you can just understand that it's just fucking who knows from where, and let it go. But once you identify the cause, extract the learning or learnings. Most of the time there's a lot of things it can show you, and then reframe it. Like I said, it takes time and it takes practice, but if you can master this one, and this is the most important step out of the 3-step technique, you will change your life, because what it forces you to do is continue living in a state of gratitude. And by doing that, you are raising your frequency, and it never ends. There's unlimited possibility for how much you can raise your frequency and how much you can evolve as a person and how much you can evolve your mindset. So if you can get this down, and if you take the time to practice it, not only will the other 2 steps be effortless, but your life will change. So what I've found people to struggle with the most with this process is listening to their thoughts and observing their thoughts and understanding when they're listening compared to when they're observing, and kind of how to do that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things to look for when you're listening compared to things you should be doing when you're observing, and the side effects of both. So listening to your thoughts is always subjective thinking. Like, there's always feelings associated when you're listening to your thoughts. So that's the first thing you really want to look for. Then it's going to be excess potential. And excess potential is essentially spending time obsessing over something that's not happening in the moment. So if there's something that's going on in your mind and it doesn't have anything to do with your current actions, or there's nothing you can do to control it, that's excess potential. Immediate emotional reaction. So whenever you have a thought and then you immediately want to make a decision, pause, think about if there's emotions attached to that, and if you're listening to your thoughts or you're observing your thoughts. Association. So that is, like we talked about earlier, being one with your thoughts. So let's say you fail a test. I am a failure versus I failed my test. You know, that doesn't make me a failure. That just means I failed my test and I probably should have studied a bit more. So making decisions from an emotional state, like I just talked about before, pay attention to this one, because this is when the most destructive decisions are made, is when they're from an emotional state. And what this does is it lowers your emotional state and your vibrational state over time, that decreasing spiral from slide 2, and it makes it harder to break. So you want to catch these early. And like I said, it takes time, but if you practice it consciously, it becomes subconscious. If you practice it consciously, it becomes subconscious. Don't forget that. Most importantly, this will lead to endless overthinking, rumination, which is essentially consistent intrusive thoughts and negative emotions like depression, anxiety, whatever. And it'll just ruin your life. Like if you don't nip it in the butt, it will ruin your life. So let's talk about observing. So this is objective thinking. This is removing the feelings and thinking about the factual data behind the thought. That part is the most important part. Question the thought, push back on it. Why am I having these thoughts? Where did this thought come from? What is the root of this thought? Notice it with zero judgment, despite some thoughts being very obscure, and you're going to have this urge to be like, why the fuck am I having these thoughts? I don't want these thoughts. Be okay with it. Sit with it. Observe it. Remember, your thoughts are not you. It's part of the 11 million bits of information your subconscious mind is intaking every second of every single day. Create space between thought and action. So when you do have these thoughts, especially when you're first starting out, do not make a decision right away, because that is likely attached to an emotion. Take some time, reflect on it, journal. That's when those tools come in. Journal and think before you make an action. And then choose your response consciously. Maybe write down the initial response you had and then come up with 5 to 6 other potential responses that you could have. And then, see the difference. And then understand the prior events, that actions that caused it, like we kind of mentioned, extract the learnings, disassociate from the event and thought. So best way to describe this is zooming out of your body and viewing yourself from third person, kind of like you're in a video game. It really helps with, changing the perspective of the event itself. I failed, but that doesn't make me a failure. Think about when you're playing a video game. Like when your character fails a level, you don't give up. You go back and you play the level again and again and again until you beat the level. Like just because your character failed and got beat by the final boss doesn't mean you're a failure. That's the best way to think about it. Gather the learnings. This is when the journal comes in handy. How is this happening for me is going to be your favorite sentence to use. I use this every single day. And what this is going to do is increase your overall level of wisdom, increase your frequency, and over time, you will live in peace. So now that you know how to actually reframe any situation and observe your thoughts and not be a listener, you want to start applying this immediately. So phase 1, which is audit your habits and environment. So habits, are my daily actions reinforcing my negative beliefs or my desired outcomes? So just think about the things you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You want to ensure that, when you're observing your thoughts, if you notice that certain thoughts come from certain actions, you're removing the actions from your life afterwards. And then what things am I still actively doing that need to go? That follows up. After you observe your thoughts, you can identify what needs to be removed from your life. Now, this is the hardest one. People. Are the people in your life helping you or hurting you? This one is very difficult. If you do not remove yourself from the people that are sending you down that negative spiral, or at least set a firm boundary with them, the spiral will not be broken. And do these people support my true goals, or do they distract me? And this one's also important. How much time am I consuming versus creating? And am I consuming dopamine disruptors or educational content? This is also very important, and subconsciously it has a lot of things to do, with our thought patterns and our outputs on a day-to-day basis, especially stuff like Instagram Reels, short form content, pornography. All of that stuff has a big toll on us subconsciously. And then environment. Does this gym, job, location, home support my mission? And are there triggers that need to be removed? Or is there an environment that I need to remove myself from? And then phase 2 is going to be craft your desired future. Now, for this phase and for the second phase, you really want to write this down and get into detail because it will make things a lot quicker and a lot more effective. So craft your desired future. Visualize your goal. In-depth description of your desired goal / outcome. I'm going to link a video down below. It's about 10-15 minutes on how to actually achieve any goal and visualize it the right way so your subconscious actually falls into play with that goal. That will be the first link in the description. Daily decisions. Would my desired self choose this right now? If not, probably should remove it. And does this, it says does this align with who I'm trying to become? Reflect on it. Aligned actions. What actions do I need to take daily to align with my goals? Something that you're not doing that you probably should start doing. Discipline would be waking up early. Focus would be deleting social media or adding app blockers. Just a couple examples. You need to find the desired person you want to become and start acting like that today, even though you don't have that result yet. That is called neuroplasticity. You will trick your subconscious mind into believing you're already that person, even though you're not. Because like I said, the subconscious mind does not know the difference between what's real and what's fake. How can I continue maximizing my potential as I grow? So you need to plan for growth and adjust accordingly as you go. Intentional choices. Who I follow on social media, what I read, what I listen to, what I watch. Be aware of frequencies in music, especially because there's a lot of music that will lower your frequency, but there's also a lot of music that will raise your frequency. So be aware of that and do some research if you need to. And then how you spend the first and last hour of your day. Those are the most important hours of the day. Reflect on it, adjust accordingly. Take a screenshot of this, save it, use it. If you can master this exercise, you will achieve anything you want in your life. Drop a comment down below if this was helpful for you. I plan on making a lot more of these videos in the future. Like I said, I paid 40 grand for months worth of content and I'm gonna give it all away for free. But if you wanna connect with me or if you wanna figure out how you can really apply this and the other tools that I know to your life directly, I'll put a link down below to book a call with me. You can also DM me on Instagram. I'm very, very active on there and I respond to all my DMs. Otherwise, subscribe if you wanna see a bit more of this content in the future and I will see you in the next video.